I'll be hosting today's ResCom session. The purpose of ResCom, which was previously known as ACTPress, is really to create a forum to facilitate and encourage collaboration between us, so amongst practitioners and also academics, really to have a knowledge exchange and explore new, emerging and different areas of practice that we may not touch in our everyday lives. Today we are really excited because what we're hearing today is actually a world first. So we're going to be the first to hear from or to hear about how to eat an elephant. It's a green paper that is not even yet released. So it will be available in around a week. So we are fortunate enough to be getting a very special preview today. So for those of you who have joined us, congratulations, because you have opened yourself up for a world first. Today, our presenters are coming to us from the other side of the world. It is around 2 a.m. On their clocks. So that is a very early start, or in some cases, a very late finish. Yeah. So welcome to Andy Green and Padraig McKeon, who have put together the paper which is part of the Dublin Conversations series. They both have extensive experience in industry. Padraig have had more than 30 years experience, and Andy similarly having worked as a visiting lecturer across a handful, actually of 5 universities. So what they're going to share with us today is their green paper, as I mentioned. You'll all encouraged to participate. You can do that in the chat as they go through the content of their green paper. And at the end of their session, we'll be opening the floor so everyone can ask their questions, raise discussion points, have a comment to share, and we do encourage everyone to participate and have an open and frank discussion around what we're going to hear from today. So over to you.
Okay, good. Hello, everyone. Good day. I just now load the screen share so we get our presentation up on. Can you see the PowerPoint? Does that come on the screen now?
Just coming up, Andy, yeah.
Yeah.
That's great, mate. 1 second there. Just I think that my laptop's working at 2 a.m. as well at the moment. Bear with me a moment. All right. Okay, we don't up there. So yeah, what we always like to say when we give a presentation is if you could put in the chat where you're calling from and what the weather is doing where you are. So at the moment, I'm calling from a very black, dark Barry Island, which is near Cardiff. Padraig, where are you calling from, mate?
I'm in Dublin City, where it is equally dark and extremely cold. So
oh man, yeah. So
still, we haven't managed to move from winter to spring in real terms. We have on the calendar, but not in the air.
Yeah, I think our seasons are a metaphorical thing compared to you guys anyway. Okay, so as Alyssa said, we're sharing our presentation. Will be a world first in terms of our new green paper of how to eat an elephant faster. And as I say, Padraig and I will be sharing with you our latest insights. But ahead of that, we'll be sharing a sort of explanation about the Dublin Conversations, as well as some of our key thinking going forward there. So
basically, we started off. This conversation started almost 3 years ago, and it started off, and it's evolved in many ways. But it started as a conversation that I suppose asked the question: do we need to redefine public relations, and do we need to find a different way of doing public relations? And that's what we started doing, and we've evolved, I suppose, a number of insights along the way. And at a very early stage, we found ourselves asking ourselves, well, what actually was the whole starting point of what we did? Were we making presumptions about the field we were in? Were we making presumptions about the parameters of the field? And were those actually adequate presumptions? And did we need to actually find, as the slide says here, a more of a focus on purpose, and not the capital P that has become the preserve of the corporate social responsibility agenda, such as it is, but a more meaningful sense of individual purpose, collective purpose around the work that we do. So that was the starting point that has led us, I suppose, to an ongoing conversation. And today we're going to give you, I suppose, a touch of that. We like to think it's both a deep dive and a roller coaster, if that's not too many analogies in one sentence. But there are times in this conversation where, because we've got very different skill sets at the table, we found ourselves getting very deeply into specific issues. And at the same time, things turn and twist, and we can't entirely predict which way we're going. The group, and we've just illustrated a few of the core people involved in this slide, are a range of people with very different backgrounds and skill sets, very different range of experiences. From Andy and myself are probably have 30 plus years experience, as does Alan and Matt coming up to it. We have people who are quite academic. We have people who are very technical. So Andrew and Kristen are very strong on data and are evolving some tools around measurement, and particularly measurement in the digital space. Sarah is an academic in Northumbria in the UK and is behind a lot of the thinking that we'll talk about later on in the Green Paper. And Moira is a relatively recent graduate. She's a girl in her mid-20s working in practice in Dublin, but a very lively, open mind who is going to be a real star of this field for many, many years to come. We also see this as a space where you could, and any one of you could be involved. And that's something that we've seen ourselves evolve over the last 2 to 3 years. We've also found, as many do, that there's that kind of, one of those immutable laws that ultimately things take a lot longer than you ever thought they would take. And we found that as the conversation has gone on, that it has actually become an extended conversation. It's taking on different parameters and it's taking on different elements. And ultimately what we're found is we're getting into a space that's somewhere between traditionally what practice would have thought of and what academics would have thought of. It's actually allowing us to actually ask questions. It's moving away from the presumption of models or the presumption of frames that might have existed, to actually challenging ourselves at a basic critical level. What is it that we're actually trying to do, and how are we going about it? So what we've evolved, if you like, is a way of thinking that is ultimately looking at new ways of thinking critically from a primary base about what we do, not making presumptions.
Okay. Thank you for the break. So we're in a challenge of how do we get people to let go? Can I introduce maybe, for those of you familiar with what's called neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, you'll be familiar with what I'm about to do, which is an anchoring technique. And a profound challenge we face is that we really need people to let go of existing thinking, of their existing ideas, to truly explore. So this next session, a few moments, may be a bit weird. In fact, will literally be painful, but we're going to do a physical exercise together. So, Porrick, you ready for this one, mate? If everyone could get their middle finger and their thumb and press your finger down on your thumb and press as hard as you can. In fact, press so much, it's almost actually really uncomfortable. And if you keep pressing and pressing, so finger down on your thumb, keep pressing until it's painful. And it hurts. You think, well, what can you do to stop the pain? What can be the solution? And a simple solution is to let go. And so really that sort of both symbolizes and provides an anchor to say that, we've got to let go of existing ways of thinking. And really, as I say, we have this phrase, wake up and smell the coffee. We've jokingly called the 5 sips to Dublin. So I'm going to share with you shortly some really sort of profound data and that provides fundamental insight into the reality of the lenses that we're using and how we view the world. And also we urge people, there's many, many isolated insights into what we believe is a reality facing those working in communications and public relations. Until now, there have been isolated insights, and we believe we're creating a narrative to link those together. And we're working in an industry that's in a subject there's profound ambiguity. Since over, say, last 120 years, there's no one universal definition of public relations. Public relations has failed to emerge as a verb, unlike, say, advertising. And we're also saying that there's been profound insights, new knowledge, there's been revolutions in neuroscience, sociology, that have all given profound insights into human behavior and how we socially interact. And really, we're saying that there's profound insights there to inform the creation of a new map, new lenses to see the world. And we're also suggesting there are fantastic opportunities looking ahead if we choose to listen and if we choose to grow with us then. So just some data about those of you familiar with Google Ngram is certainly one of my favorite toys. You just simply put in a word, phrase or term and Google will track its usage. And you can see there a startling decline, the data in terms of declining usage of the term public relations. There's been a 50% decrease in the last 30 years. And even people getting bored talking about the subject of future of public relations, with a peak about 7 years or so ago, and again, a significant decline following now. And even potentially, are we witnessing the emergence of a toxic brand where the term PR is used, it's used in a negative sense? So we're discussing an issue that's not just of academic interest, but one of profound interest, in that we take one of our adages is that a society that cannot talk to each other, tolerate one another, or collaborate cannot tackle the big issues it face. So what we believe has emerged is a toolkit, a way of thinking that not only for professionals and academics in the field of public relations, but a crucial issue for our society to address. So as I say, we're going to share with you now the Dublin Conversations. As I say, it's been an evolving, merging thinking, hasn't it, Porrick?
Yeah, well, this is the map, I suppose, of where we started. If you look at the top left-hand corner, when we very first met, as I said, we were asking the question, does there need to be a new definition of public relations? And the conversation was originally around the idea of a Dublin definition. But within conversation, and our first meeting was May 2018, we had about 20 people in a room in was now the TU, Technical University of Dublin. And we were looking at the whole area of this definition, and it emerged as a conversation point that actually we needed to start with our purpose. And the purpose was ultimately central to anything that we were doing, and the new thinking that we could develop would evolve from there. Okay. So we ended up using a sort of a combination of things to go through a number of stages. We had this idea of a journey to Dublin. There were 5 points or 5 questions that we could ask. And then we started to look at ideas of liminality, which we come on to, and some humble intelligence, and a number of other kind of core concepts, which kind of informed our thinking and allowed us to develop a set of choices and a set of some models that we were able to help, some of which are building on things that are out there, like the PESO model, or more recently stuff on post-BR, which was much of it emanated from your own colleague in Australia, Jim McNamara. So we've been inspired in our conversations, not just by the conversations we're having, but also the literature that's existing and evolving within the wider world, to find a space between the academic literature and the world of the practitioner, to develop tools that ultimately release and enable the critical thinking of every individual on their own terms.
Okay, so just a moment, just move on. Okay, so I really want to share with you briefly our model of what we call the Dublin Conversations. And really we have a model, what we call the 5 steps to Dublin, which I will shortly be elaborating upon. And really what we believe that we're helping practitioners in giving the confidence to let go and explore big important issues. We also believe we're creating a headspace to explore, a bandwidth to take on board big thinking, as well as a fast track to change with both our 5 steps to Dublin mindset model we've shared with you, our toolkit of more than 35 tools, our 5 green papers, of which is going to be the first, a dictionary, pilot trial projects around the world, as well as creating a time and a place. And really we see the big issue is that we're tackling the elephant in the room. And the elephant of the communications industries being a place where the old rules no longer work and the new ones need to be written, and where is desperately needed an urgent space to fast track change, because the wider society issues, we need to step up to the plate to help our wider society challenge issues and address this issue, as Porrick says, of an idea that emanating originally from the thinking of Professor Jim McNamara, which we call resourceful trust, the glue that enables our society to cooperate, collaborate, and work together. And so looking at really share with our model that we call it the 5 steps to Dublin, and we've developed in a way that we're offering people a fast track and a slow track. And our fast track is that one of the things we'll be inviting people to do in our way to engage is actually reciting these 5 steps to Dublin in 55 seconds. But I'll take our time slightly here today, but central, as Porrick has highlighted, the center of our universe is purpose, which we believe is universal. Everyone everyone has a biological purpose to survive, grow, and multiply. We call that your business purpose. The species fit to survive and grow and multiply are the ones that collaborate. Equally, you also have a creative purpose to find meaning in what you do, evoking Aristotle's idea about character. And thirdly, you have a social purpose, which we define as how you socially interact with others to fulfill your business and creative purposes. No one is an island. A purpose is a universal, a guiding star for all. Being purposeful when you help another person is, however, less prevalent. And there's a profound distinction there. Purpose is universal. Purposeful, helping others, is the critical elixir for enabling people to work together. Step 2 is that 5 simple rules define what you need to do to socially interact with others. Inspired by the work of Nobel Prize-winning behavioral psychologist Daniel Kahneman and others, it identifies that we're emotionally driven animals, but 5 simple rules guide and frame social interaction. If you do one or more of these help your journey. The 5 simple rules of known, liked, trusted, front of mind, and being talked about. And we believe this frames any campaign, any brief for any social interaction journey. So the second step is really to go on a journey to address those 5 elements. And thirdly, that you're familiar with the PESO model, and we believe that needs to be profoundly evolved, and it distinctly needs to be a move away from being description of channels and really 5 choices, 5 spaces of strategic intent, 5 scope the options available to you. So we're saying that the O needs to be the own, and that is more than just channels, but your own, just being there. You can communicate by osmosis. Your reputation, your brand, your personal communications, your social capital, narrative, as well as your own media channels, and paid for any activity where you connect with others. Earned, so traditional remit of, say, media relations, but also things like SEO. And we're also introducing the dimension of nudge, how you can make it easier for others to engage with others without even directly communicate them to achieve the outcomes you so desire. And lastly, shared, which is more than online but offline, so that it can be, we always say that the graffiti in ancient Rome was an early form of social media. And then moving on to step 4 is a concept of emergence, that we listen, connect, and do to socially interact with people, and then you listen to what emerges. And we believe that emergence shapes our reality, your world, from the bottom up. It explains how advertising emerged out of the need to get known and noticed, and how public relations origins emerge from the need to earn trust. And so we're rooting the foundation stone of this idea of public relations in the task of earning trust that emerges from the 5 rules of how to socially interact. And lastly, that in order to effectively interact, we need to respect resourceful trust, the trust that exists that enables you to be open to understanding to other. And from the latest in sociology, emerges that 2 out of 3 people will help a stranger, 1 out of 3 don't. And so this really critical need about resourceful trust, how we cooperate together. So going forward, we're saying those 5 steps to Dublin provide a mantra, a simple way to create a new mindset. And with our toolkit, we've got a fast route of making it easy for people to go. I apologize, jumping about there. So among our 35 tools, a simple tool of the comms canvas. So this will guarantee to generate instant results. So it merely helps you, triggers you to explore how you known, liked, trusted, front of mind, being talked about, and helps you move from your current state to your desired state. And our tools even range to more complex issues of like moral decisions and ethical decisions. Our Purposewash canvas, which we believe is the only tool of its kind that offers granularity, where it addresses 12 key issues that affect ethical behavior, ranging from lying and immoral behavior, now even to it's called toxic sludge. Sludge is a term you might not be familiar with, but it's an act where you deliberately make something difficult in order to achieve an outcome. And that could be positive. So you think of medications which have child-proof locks. And that's a form of sludge. You're making it difficult. But you may have dark sludge where you deliberately make things bad. So you can see there a whole range of issues that we can help provide people to make ethical decisions. So we're bridging new thinking with practical tools. And we offer 6 families of tools and a journey going from a set of tools to identify your character and purpose. And we have what's called a purpose pyramid, which is 7 steps to reveal your character and purpose. Tools to help you manage being purposeful. Tools to manage what we call Purposewash, and we believe Purposewash needs to be recognized not just as a pejorative term, but a body of malpractice, where by understanding how it works, we can minimize its impact and also enable practitioners to avoid and advise their clients. And we believe also in strategic comms, how to guide your interactions from a top down. And we also believe there needs to be a bottom-up approach, what we labeled social capital comms. And we need to move faster and quicker, and therefore we're providing a creativity kit to facilitate faster, quicker ideas. And that's a really quick way. So if you want to instantly engage with the Dublin Conversations, we're giving you a mantra that you can recite in 55 seconds, a series of tools to instantly get going. The slow road, however, is really where we need to say maybe take a longer journey. And the reality is that it's complex, it's complicated. There's a lot to it in terms of creating a new framework of thinking. So we're taking offering people a journey with 5 green papers, the first of which is how to eat an elephant faster, where we're saying the elephant in the room is this subject of what we're going to talk to you shortly about, liminality, where the old rules don't work and the new ones need to be written. And so I'll show you how to eat that elephant faster. Porritt's reference about purpose, and so really go on your journey, you need a compass, but we believe that compass is in need of repair. We're recommending 15 ways that purpose can be reframed, revitalized to be more effective. And also on your journey, you need to be the analogy of a better chess player. And we see one of the key future roles of public relations practitioners as being a chess player, of coordinating different tools, different ways to socially interact. And recognizing that you can't change the world from above, we say you can't change the world from your helicopter, a need for a low road of social capital, bottom-up change. And crucially, how do we know on your destination, you've arrived or you're successful? So our green paper, make sure the lights are on when you get there, explores how we measure concepts such as value. So you can see there, a slow journey that invites you to sort of explore the issues in a deeper way. But it's critical that if we want to create change, you need both the option of a fast route and a slow route. And ultimately, we're engaging a program activity which will create a change manifesto, a new blueprint for the communications industries to go forward, a blueprint that's been co-created with conversations like we're having today around the world over the next 5 months. So we can create a legacy from our activities of a family of iterated versions of our tools, which we're launching, plus, as I say, the insight and collective wisdom from these many conversations. So I say, Porritt, do you want to sort of introduce now about our first of our green papers?
The first of the green papers, I suppose, if you were to try and say, well, there's a lot covered there, and there is an enormous amount of content that will evolve from this conversation. But we want to kind of come back to say the starting point here is like what are the building blocks, or what ultimately are they, if you like, the philosophical concepts that we're building this around, and what are we looking at? And the first is this idea of liminality, which Andy has just touched on there. That kind of, the idea that the modern professional operates in multiple spaces and timeframes, and that what we do is that, we have a converged set of disciplines in our world triggered by digital, and that what that requires is that people are basically comfortable working betwixt and between, and that people are able to work between different roles, different identities, different channels, and you have this concept of the liminal space. And what we would be looking at is that, the professional identity is changing, and pointing to the importance of those sort of liminal experiences and being able to cope with that thinking in modern careers going forward, because people now are required to operate in those in-between spaces. And we have seen some activity and some conversations in the research world around the whole idea of encroachment. But actually, rather than resisting, and rather than looking at differences, and rather than trying to retain the merit or the value of walls or barriers between different fields, that we should look at how conventional work roles, organizations, career paths, career stages, capabilities, and indeed the work that we do, how those are actually evolving and changing within this kind of space where the old world, the old rules don't necessarily work anymore, and actually it's difficult to sustain the merit of one set of principles above another just because of the name they had. And we found ourselves looking at this in a practical point of view, saying that no matter who you met, they seem to be entering the conversation through the conditioning of wherever they started their career. So they either started on the paid side or the media side or some other side. And there was a sense that you had to try and justify the relationships and the rationale that you had for that type of work through that portal. And we're actually saying, no, we've got to think in a much more diffused way. The second area, and it kind of builds on that, is this idea of rhizomatic knowledge. And rhizomatic structures are basically, I guess in simple terms, what I might call messy structures. Because ultimately what you're talking about is that rhizomatic thinking talks that our world and our reality is made up of many different, but on the one hand, we have people, we have differences, and we have heterogeneous. Multiplicity, diffuse relationships, linkages, mutations. This is the idea of rhizomatic thinking. It's basically messy thinking. And ultimately, our sense would be that to actually put any shape on the world around you, you have to, first of all, accept its messiness, accept that things are not necessarily linear, accept that things won't always flow in a given direction, and that you won't have clarity, you'll have ambiguity, and you'll have a need to actually live with that ambiguity, and that becomes part of the world we're living in. This sense of liquidity is becoming, in a different sense, a world that is liquid, as against liquidity from an economic point of view, is something that we have to become familiar with and comfortable with, and we have to be able to live with. And then the third piece is the idea of humble intelligence. That ultimately, nobody has a patent on the sun. There is always somebody out there who has an idea, who has a concept, who can add to the collective body of knowledge. And that insight can come from any and all sources. It doesn't necessarily come in with an elite, and it is ultimately powered by listening. And listening is ultimately what drives. And it's in that context that the conversations are an empowering piece, because we don't actually see this. Although we will look to produce, some form of documentation, and we will certainly, and we have already got sets of tools, we don't see this as being about providing a single answer. We believe that the conversation itself is what is the outcome, and that what we're actually driving at and building here is a body of conversation which informs and which gives people a capacity to do their jobs better, to think more originally, to think more critically. So we don't see ourselves as providing the answer. We see ourselves as facilitating people in finding their space within this kind of fluid, liquid, and probably liminally challenged world at this point in time.
And really, as I say, emerging from that, we believe that public relations is, to use a military strategy term, at a choke point where we've got critical decisions to be made in order to where potentially the profession could flourish, or ironically, our ideas of spread and develop could hasten its demise, decline, as indicated in the data we've shared with you. There's hope for the profession, though. As I say, from sociology, we now know that 2 out of 3 people will help a stranger, and equally 1 out of 3 don't. So that's a fundamental facet of human nature. And we believe that actually that really is the sort of foundation stone for 2 instincts in how we socially interact. We call it we-led thinking, which works from an outside-in perspective. It works from a perspective of looking out how we the world from others and then to your own situation. Contrast is me-led thinking, which is this is me, this is what I want, this is how I want you to connect with me, a sort of inside-out approach. So two profound distinct instincts, and going forward, there's potential, we believe, for public relations to rejuvenate itself, revitalize itself around this concept of we-led thinking with the task of earning trust at the foundation stone of its worldview, philosophy and narrative. And really, as I say, there's a big question mark here because, as I say, Porrick mentioned, we don't say we have the answer. We hopefully, by providing a body of well-developed tools, thinking that bridges theory and practice, we can act as the most robust, resilient counterpoint to help people grow. But really, we anticipate sort of three, maybe, quotes, PR animals of the future, and we welcome your discussion on this. One is about PR-led strategic comms. We're the better chess player, where we're, that at the moment the word integrated communications is defined as essentially like a game of chess, how you manage different pieces. Well, we see comms as a much bigger entity than that. It's a bigger landscape. It's not just about the chess pieces, but the chess player. Are they conducting the game right? Are they observing the rules, treating their opponent with respect? And more profound than that even, the chess player's purpose and their social purpose and their wider role within society. So there's a way there where PR people could be the lead role in we-led thinking in PR-led strategic comms, or a specialist within the opens choices, particularly of own, managing your own brand, reputation, story, earned, the traditional area of media relations and beyond, a nudge about how you can influence behaviors, as well as the S dimension. And we believe also that there's actually new, as yet undefined job roles, job task of directors of purpose. And who is the person with an organization managing its most profound dimension? And we feel public relations people coming from a we-led perspective are in a prime role, prime candidates to go forward here. So in our Porrick mentioned about our conversations, and we identified that there's essentially four maybe types of conversation that we're likely to be having over the coming months. And we've created from a 2x2 matrix with the variable of being open to a conversation, but also like a degree of sunk cost in the existing status quo. And we're going to find that there's actually a lot of people who are already doing what we're doing. But say we've not been labelled, formally defined, or linked with the Dublin Conversations. So we're going to find those sort of people. We're going to help them faster on their journey, providing a body of new thinking, a set of new tools. Equally, there's a number of people in flux, recognise there's a need for change, but not knowing where to go, a starting point. And this is where the Dublin Conversations provides a vital role in giving that starting point, building the confidence, creating the headspace, and making it easier to change. In contrast, however, we see as we call monsters, using storytelling technique of identifying the issues you need to address. And a vast majority of practitioners are in what we call soft denial. And soft denial is, yes, they really recognize they need to change. We share with them ideas about the Dublin Conversations, and they're very polite and say, that's interesting, but then no behavior change whatsoever, partly from powers of inertia, partly a sense of lack of headspace, that they're too busy, too overwhelmed with coping with the now. And really, we've got to make a profound impact in how do we build a people confidence, the belief that you can address these issues, and the urgent need. We use the analogy that many are like someone trying to put out a fire with their arms behind their back, and by embracing new thinking, new tools, they can tackle that fire with far greater ability, power, and agility. And lastly, there's people in hard denial. And these really may be sort of two routes here. People in what we call 1993 glasses, a view of the world pre-internet, pre the impact of digital technology, that, as I say, has resolutely sort of not adapted to the new world. And equally, there are people with what we call 2004 glasses, acquired since the emergence of Web 2.0, who are very open to embracing new ideas at a tactical or strategic level, but are unwilling to let go of existing lenses to look at wider goals that may influence their thinking, particularly around the centrality of purpose. So we see the way forward in that we're going to have whatever your situation, we can help grow, emerge new ideas, new thinking, as long as you're prepared to let go. As I say, Porrick and I have been around the world, albeit sort of virtually, and a way forward we see is a series of pilot trials of our new tools. Our first of which was our friends and colleagues in Canada, with members of the Public Relations Society of Canada, where we devised a pilot program to test our purpose pyramid tools of how to identify your purpose and character. And we are looking to repeat these trials in both UK, Ireland, and particularly in Australia. And so we're going to finish this presentation with an invitation. Please help us get this pilot trial in Australia happen, make it a thing. But you can see there fantastic feedback from our Canadian friends, but equally many, many lessons on how we can evolve and grow our message. And looking to say, like, the message, we're looking also in our campaign to offer fun and engaging ways. Porrick, are you looking forward to this one about our blind date?
And this is one of the things, actually, you know, that we found in our conversations. And you know, I'm in my mid-50s. I've been a practitioner for 35 years. I've been in the academic space over the last 5 or 6 years in particular. And I suppose I come with a particular experience and mindset and perspective. But one of the things that we have opened out in the various different conversations that we've had is we've started to talk to people who are now studying, the people that I'm teaching, people that Andy is teaching, but also from other universities in the UK and Ireland, and engage with them, because you know, we have to understand and accept that the public relations and the communications world of the future is one that will not just be determined by people like us, but will be determined by people who have very different perspectives in life, very different entry points in life, very different ways of communicating and receiving communication, and they see the world in a very different way. And albeit that they may be 30, 35 years younger in terms of their career experience, they're still well capable and well educated to critical thought. And we're finding that they're actually probably a greater sense of critical thinking on their part than we had at their age. So in listening to them, there are ideas like this that they're coming forward. So they were talking about the ideas of blind dating or speed dating or other ways of actually challenging the presumptions and if you like, the walls that were there around how we would do communications and public relations into the future. And we think this is a healthy thing, because it isn't just about finding one way. It isn't just about trying to accept a particular diktat or frame of reference for what we do. The world we have to help to shape and create and facilitate is one that's going to have many different ways of communicating, many different ways of listening, many different ways of defining and packaging messages. So I think we feel we have to accommodate that.
And then, so we're even looking at ideas like our equivalent of the Dublin Ice Bucket Challenge. As I say, an idea emerging with our conversations with our student group. How quickly can you read the 5 steps to Dublin? Can you do it in faster than 55 seconds? Record it and share it and nominate someone else with the challenge. So again, really trying to bring what could be an arid, dry, cold theoretical subject alive and vibrant, engaging. And critically, because we cannot afford to wait. We cannot wait for a generation for newer thinking to emerge. New ideas are urgently needed by our society. And we believe by engaging with the Dublin Conversations, we can create a wave of change, a change that reaches the highest heights of purpose and greater social mission, to the depths of emotions and engagement, and to create really a stronger, resilient, yet dynamic response of how communications practitioners can advance their practice and be of service to their wider world to achieve greater results. And so, as I say, I mean, Porrick and I, we've a series of asks. As I say, what do you think is an important first step, Porrick?
I think there's a couple of things, but clearly what we want to do is engage people to be involved in conversations. I mean, we've had an exercise with a peer group in Canada where we took them through a particular set of our canvases, for example, around the whole concept of purpose. So there are 5 or 6 tools that actually come together to help either an individual or a small organization to recenter their own sense of purpose with a small p. And that would be one simple way of doing things. It's a sample of our tools. but basically it helps people to engage deeply with the ideas and the thinking and come up with their own sense of purpose. We also would be looking at this idea of, we call it a world tour. So we would take a set of our tools, our canvases, and in the course of a 24-hour period, we would do a number of different workshops in different places around the world. So we might be doing it here at lunchtime in Australia, but we might also be doing it if we were in the United States right now, we'd be at supper time. So it'll be, we would be transversing the world by basically putting down our feet for an hour or two in each space over a period of 24 hours. But I guess that the starting point would really be to put out the call and say, could we have a group of people who would be willing to engage in a pilot conversation, which would probably look at 3 or maybe 4 events at the most, small one, discrete groups, the same group over a period of time, working together, perhaps in pairs, but within a workshop setting, to actually work their way through these tools and actually get a sense of, if you like, the profound release that can come from looking at some of these ideas.
Okay, thank you for that, Porrick. Okay, so really that recreating our dark night life there, Porrick. So yeah, so really to conclude, we've shared with you why we need to listen, critically let go, learn new thinking and doing, why we all need to eat an elephant faster, and really we're a critical role of how can we be more purposeful at the junction of stoppable bad and unstoppable good. So guys, we've taken you on a tour, exploring, and hopefully lit the touch paper there for hopefully a conversation. So we'd really welcome the conversation. So if I stop sharing here and made a conversation begin. Good to see you, Alyssa, again.
I've got a question to, I guess, kickstart the discussion, and it's really about the slide you had that depicted the choke point. So I'm keen to hear what people's views or thoughts are on that particular notion of a choke point, particularly when it comes to, I guess, using where we are now in the industry as an opportunity to either revitalise it, or conversely, is this the start of demise? How do people feel about that?
Is that directed at us, Lisa, or is it at...
just everyone generally. And it could even be from other feedback that you've had from some of the other conversations that you've had with practitioners globally and academics globally as well.
I'd answer that, and this is, and what you'll find here is that Andy and I might not necessarily have the same thoughts on individual topics like this, because this is the essence of the conversation. And going back to Andy's point about, we need to listen to varied views and be willing to open, that the analogy or the image of what happened in America, illustrating what happens when you don't listen to diverse and alternate perspectives. But I would look at this and ask the question, if we want to stay within the limits of what we do, if we want to stay within the parameters of the walls of what are defined in any one of what might be a series of creative communication sectors, and if we feel the need to, defend and frame everything through those, then I think, yes, you potentially are looking at demise, simply because the world is a really messy, but not in an intentionally messy way, but it's people have a greater sense of their own capability to define how they want to hear and see things than they would have had in the time of our parents or in any other period of their life. And that's not going to change. If I have 3 teenage children, if I look at the way they consume information, if I look at the way they disseminate, distinguish between things and then disseminate among themselves, it's significantly more diverse, fluid, and unstated even as to what they're doing. And in that context, I think the communication will always exist. In fact, I think there are now more ways of communicating, and there are more challenges to understand it. So there is more and more and more of what we do and what we would want to do, but it doesn't necessarily fit into all the boxes. So if we want to hold it within the boxes, if we want to hold it within channels and retain control over channels in terms of the process and the way it works, and even my thinking on this is not necessarily even framed in clear and defined language. But if we want very limited framed ways of understanding how communication happens, then we're going to find ourselves in lonely places. Whereas if we move forward and accept if you like, the unstructured nature of it, if we accept the encroachment, but also the opportunity, the ambiguity that on the one hand we may be losing, but on the other hand we've got the greatest opportunity we may have ever had, and that how we come to reframe our understanding of all of that gives us endless opportunity. That's how I see it. Now, when I see, I can't draw the path in front of me. I just know that's the way it's going, and I'm seeing that from the stimulus of this conversation, and then watching what's happening in my own kitchen.
And I'd love to know, I mean, Alyssa, are you an optimist or a pessimist about the future of public relations?
For me, I'm very much an optimist.
Yeah, and as I say, in what way, what fuels your optimism, I ask?
For me, it's very much the fluidity of how the industry, and certainly from my frame of experience, is evolving, and the level of adaptability that I see both in practice but also in students as well, and just their, I guess, open-mindedness to try new things, to test and learn, and to be open to those conversations, and to, I guess, listening to feedback and to adapting to what is presented to them.
Yeah, and that sounds wonderful. Examples of what we would label we-led thinking, and it's an instinct, and you get people passionately talking about public relations, myself included, and really what I believe that passion is not necessarily about this abstract word of or concept of public relations, but really that sort of world view, that perspective, that instinct that, you know, our first response is to see the world from an outside. How does the outside world see this, and what's the right way to respond? So that's very much, I see that instinct very much alive there. I'd be interested to see if anyone else in the room is an optimist or a pessimist, and are we providing a toolkit to enable people like the optimists in the world to do their job even better? Are we providing a toolkit that can, you know, help them do their job more confidently and capably? As I say, it'd be interesting to explore what you thought. And anyone disagree? Does anyone think we're, as I say, because I always have a saying that if two people agree on everything, one of them is useless. So we're always welcome to explore the difference, which enables both sides to grow there. So, I mean, it might be just maybe in the chat, if people could put in a chat if they're an optimist or a pessimist, that would be an interesting poll to conduct. So do put in the chat, guys, if you're an optimist or a pessimist. That'd be lovely to see the where you stand in the world and your world viewpoint. As I say, I'm with Alyssa, that, you know, full square of the optimist, but we've got to be optimism. Well, I perhaps call it armed optimism. Optimism, a better toolkit there.
And it's what people are reflecting on that and thinking about where they sit on that spectrum of being optimistic or pessimistic. I'm keen to get more of an understanding about how the PR animals of the future and how those personas were sort of built out or arrived at.
Yeah. Well, really, as I say, I think what we're respecting is about complexity. And so one animal to emerge from complexity is like the chess player with the helicopter view, and therefore, but what now equipped, if using the Dublin Conversation, of more a blank canvas to arrive at strategically neutral options in the opens parameters. And so there's a response in terms of the a bigger picture overview of complexity, and then within complexity a greater fragmentation of specialists. So, you know, when Porrick and particularly I began my career, you know, search engine optimization, influencers, and much more, content marketing, as I say, all unknown terms. And I'm sure if we were to meet again in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, there's going to be a host of other job titles out there that are currently beyond current perception. So it's a combination of two, but with greater fragmentation, if you've got a stronger anchor, a stronger framework that provides an explanation, because Porrick and I are passionate, there's nothing so much as practical as good theory. And that's what we need, because the danger is without this, we won't be able to see the wood for the trees. greater fragmentation. And therefore, as I say, it's a paradoxical world of greater simplicity in giving an overview, and yet greater complexity in terms of the detail, the granularity, and even further complexity. So yeah, and then, as I say, this whole new dimension of directors or purpose or purpose sisters, as we're labelled them. That, as I say, who's best equipped? And as you said there, Alyssa, that these students we're working with, should we actually be now equipping them to say, guys, you can go forward and be the directors of purpose of tomorrow, and go forward and write your own job description. Go forward and shape that world, shape those careers that you're wonderfully equipped for. So there's some fantastic opportunities, but if we've got the right map, the right compass, and the right tools to help us get there, I think. Yeah. So as I say, I mean, it'd be interesting to say, anyway, Porrick, are you an optimist or a pessimist, my friend? Oh, lovely to hear from
very much an optimist. Very much an optimist. Yeah, I mean, I think look, there's lots of dangers in the world, but I think in terms of what we do, I think that the world of communications, I mean, I would have, in a simple way, I think every organization has many different elements that it needs to progress, and they will vary between different organizations. But one that is can't be changed, can't be taken out of it, is communication. Now, an organization needs finance, an organization needs people, but it also needs communication. And I was doing a piece of work recently where I was looking at the number of people. There in the population of Ireland, we believe there's about somewhere between 4,500 people, 4,500 and 5,000 people professionally employed in communications. According to the last census, there were 180,000 people employed in the professional finance area. And I believe that information and the flow of information, the flow of data, and going back to your early point with a reference to SEO and data analytics and those particular fields, the flow of intelligence and the flow of information, the need to understand how information flows in an organization and how it affects an organization, how it fuels an organization, how it keeps an organization going, and how it maintains an organization in its relationships with people outside it, would become as important, if not more important, the function of organizations in the next decades and centuries than just finance. So I think the work that we do will become more and more and more important, and I believe it's essential, and I believe that will become more and more of a recognized professional skill set, albeit it will not necessarily fall into the nice, neat categories. That might be, as I say, that might be the categories that it has evolved over in the last 2 or 3 decades.
And Porrick, we've got some good news. The number of optimists in the room has doubled with Alyssa, and now we've joined by Louisa. Louisa, we'd love to hear, if you'd like to unmute, I'd love to have a chat about why you feel optimistic. And Louise, do you feel like you could be a director of purpose? Oh, no problem there, Louise. But it's good to really appreciate the indication of optimism there from us there. So yeah, I mean, I think, as I say, there's profound grounds for this optimism. I'm also passionate about grounding insights in data, and really just urge people, like, look at the facts, the reality. One other survey we did in the UK, we got the top largest 20 PR agencies, and we created a word cloud from the About Us section on their website about how they describe themselves. And so from that word cloud were many, many different words, but 2 words were missing. And those 2 words were public relations. So the 20 largest UK PR agencies don't use the word public relations to describe themselves. And so really we've got this issue about wake up and smell the coffee, guys. But are we on a slow boat about to hit an iceberg, or can we actually create a flotilla of fast moving agile craft to take us to a horizon of a better future? I've never been so poetic at 3 a.m. in the morning, but that's these conversations.
Well, sorry, you might have been, but not in circumstance you want to tell us about.
Andy, if just a follow-up question to the comment you just made, if they didn't use the word public relations to describe themselves, what words did they use?
That's a great question. Well, we're suggesting that we're not coming with an answer, but what's an emergent term is the word comms. I don't know you, but I've met people who've called themselves heads of comms department, yet there's no formal definition of comms or a framework of thinking about what constitutes comms practice. So certainly one candidate could be like, director of comms, head of comms, comms agency. We're seeing sort of a response, so that a lot of people now using the term communications. But what we're believing is that what we're in the business of, social interaction, is bigger than communications, because it also involves behavior change, and also it's bigger than that. It is always about social cohesion. And here about how we've not only got to sort of influence and change people, but we've got to invest in the stuff that binds us together, that holds us together, that provides stability. So there's the word comms is now in one of our Andrew Smith, one of our colleagues. He studied the data of the content of PR Week, the UK edition of PR Week, and 40% of the articles reference comms. So you can see there's a label that's emerged, and people have been sort of using it without any clear definition, but it's serving there as a sort of function in the sort of liminal space that we're in. An instinctive response is to adopt this wider label, but it'd be even better if that label had a coherent definition, framework of thinking, so they could use it more purposefully. So director of comms could be a candidate, but emergence will tell. And maybe with what we're doing here, we're giving maybe a boost to the concept of comms, which may then speed up its thing. That's one possible candidate. I mean, what's your job title, Alyssa?
Mine is actually communications. Yeah. So it's general manager of communications, and PR or public relations is one function within that.
So you can see there, like, so you've sort of emerged in a bigger picture there. So how long? What was your job title before that?
Previous to that, which takes me back about a decade, which I think demonstrates the evolution of the industry. Certainly here in Australia, it was public relations. So it was all-encompassing, but there was that definition and that framework put around it.
Yeah. Well, one of our tasks, I know Porrick's on the case in Ireland, is to just get someone to go through your database. How many people use the title public relations either in their job title or department or organisation, and compare that now to, say, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Informal studies I've done show that it's dropped dramatically. And again, no one's actually handling that data there.
To that, I mean, Andy, I hadn't even had a reason to discuss this yet, but I was involved in a detailed discussion with a client in the since the turn of this year about how they would frame the title of a new head for, like, basically strategically they decided to actually make communications a board level appointment, or say a senior management team appointment. And they came down on the side of communication and engagement, because they are seeing it as, strategically, I think this is the right thing to do in the context of a social enterprise, which is what they are. They have a small number of very large stakeholders, but they are critical to their long-term future. So the engagement of those stakeholders is absolutely central to their livelihoods, to the organization's lifeblood. And they see engagement with them as being a critical function of communication, and communication and engagement being, collectively the fuel that makes that work. So they've called it communication and engagement, and they didn't even consider public relations.
And I think what we're witnessing there, that we're floundering in this area of liminality, and we're clutching at labels like communications, which are far too general and abstract. And as I say, we're hindering our progress by a lack of appropriate clothing in the branding terms of a label. We did a creative exercise, which I won't recite. We did an exercise that if we had to define what we're doing, because it's complex, and we used a creative technique of like writing a poem, and we created this sort of doggerel verse, which I shall spare you at this time of day, but it went something along. There was a conversation in Dublin that knew it something troubling, and we then read out a list of about 50 roles that the modern day practitioner is involved in, and then we knew it had to be called a something. And I think really an emergent new label would serve us better. That's my view. So a director of comms has more focus, purpose, and status. That is something different than what's gone on before. So, but there's a need, because, as I say, like, as a result of these floppy, loose titles, we're fighting our fires with one or more arms behind our back, in my view.
Just in view of time, before we wrap up, what is the best way for people to get involved and for us to get engaged with what you've talked to us about today?
That's a great question. So please, we're urgently looking to create a panel of about 10 people representing areas of academic and practice. So if you're interested, you're going to get an exclusive free training where it consists of free 60-minute workshops as this project team. We're looking to get 10 people to work with us to attend free online 60 workshops. If either yourself or if you know anyone else, please, and also there, spread the word. Please check us out on our website. Check out the How to Eat an Elephant Green paper when we launch it. Make it available, and also visit our website, dublinconversations.org, and really just please drop us a line, get in touch, and have a conversation, and critically address this thing of soft denial. Don't just say, well, that's interesting. Do something, do something that broadens your thinking. What do you think, Parek?
Yeah, no, I think that's the way to go. I think the experience of the pilot test, as we called it, is probably not even the right phrase, because it gives the sense that it's an evolution of what we're doing, and it's a conversation or a series of conversations in themselves. But the exercise we undertook with a cohort of similar profile, which would have been a mix of practitioners, people who are in the university sector and the higher education sector, who had come from practice backgrounds, and indeed people who are in the university sector who are completely academic. But it basically enlightened the conversation. It challenged the conversation. It put new thinking into it in itself. So it added value for the conversation, but it also added significant value for the people that were involved. And interestingly enough, of the 9 or 10 people that participated, I think it's fair to say, Andy, that each of them took away a different point. Each of them found, or they found different points along the way were more profound than others, but there was no one place that everybody stopped and said, this is it. Some people found points A and D to be very profound. Some people found points E and F to be very profound, but it had a very significant value for them, and it also added to the collective sense of learning and progression.
It also told us about points H, I, J, K, and so on that we didn't know of, that have helped deepen our understanding as well. There. So, but massive thanks to you, Alyssa, for and you guys for making this happen. Very much appreciate the opportunity to engage, converse, and grow our thinking as a result. So you've given us some new further food for thought. So thank you so much for this.
No, thank you both for so much for joining us, and particularly given the time difference, we do really appreciate it. And we also value being able to launch your paper here in Australia and hear from you first. So there are some clear calls to action there. It's been great to hear from you. I think you're doing some great work. And it is thought-provoking and I think very purposeful as well. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you to those of you online. And Maddie has put your website in our chat for people to access, get in contact, and tap into the resources that you have. So thank you again.
Very good. Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you very much.
And bye, everyone.
Thank
Have
you.
a great weekend.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Thank you.